This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the GSMC Sports Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, as always, Jeff Malinoff. It's just me for the day. Mark is with his family for Thanksgiving, so it's all good. We're still going to do the show. And we got a lot to talk about today, since it's the aftermath of all the Turkey Day games and all things that went down. We're going to talk about all the games, like the 3 football games, NFL games that happened, and we're also going to talk about Wednesday's NBA games as a little roundup there, as well as every game that's going to happen this week on Sunday. So we're going to get right into it with these Thursday morning, afternoon, and night games, basically. And we're going to start off with the morning game, and that was the Chicago Bears and the Detroit Lions. Chicago Bears edged this one out 23-16. They scored 14 points in the fourth quarter to steal the victory and keep their firmly in place of the NFC North, and Detroit is still way in the back of the pack at the moment. But Chase Daniels, in replace of Mitchell Trubisky, played relatively well. 27-37, 230 yards, 2 touchdowns. You could see him before the game. He was a little excited to go into the game. So in the tunnel, he basically went by himself and came out by himself, and all the other players are looking at him in the tunnel, befuddled or laughing at him. So it was a little fun thing to get into. But relatively, it was a good game for the offense, but it was mainly a great game for the defense, in my opinion. Fuller in the secondary, he had an interception and 2 pass deflections. Another game, there's another interception by Jackson, and it was just they just had Matthew Stafford's number. It felt like it was just, and honestly, felt like Stafford kind of was not on his game. He had no touchdowns, 2 picks, sacked only twice though, but still he went 28 of 38 for 236 yards. But those 2 picks were pretty costly. And it kind of was on the back of LeGarrette Blount a little bit, to be completely honest. And LeGarrette Blount with 19 attempts, 88 yards and 2 touchdowns. The only 2 touchdowns for the Lions in that game. But the bottom line is, like, Stafford didn't really show up. Like, yeah, the numbers think he really did well, but those 2 picks were very costly in the loss. And the question now remains, like, should they move on from Stafford now? I mean, he was the first overall pick after their 0-16 season in 2009, or 2008. They were 0-16. I'm saying they drafted him in 2009. But do they get rid of him? Or maybe not get rid of him, but do they try to find a new quarterback in the draft? Do they try to find one in the free agent market? Maybe try to fight for the job and make Matthew Stafford play better? Because I think quarterbacks, especially relatively, play a lot better if they know their job is not totally secure. There's a lot of, I believe that's true, just because of the fact that when you know you're not secure, your job is not totally secure, you're going to do everything you can to make sure that you remain in that starting position. And if you give Stafford someone if you sign someone in free agency that can actually be a good starter or a decent starter, maybe like a Ryan Fitzpatrick type. I know he's struggling, but still someone that can light the fire underneath Stafford, thinking, oh, I can be replaced at any single moment. Maybe he plays better. I honestly don't know. But overall, you look at the fact that the Lions are on the bottom of the NFC North at the moment, and the Bears are looking, and their defense especially, are looking like a team to beat in the NFC. Like, when it comes down to the playoffs, and the Bears are 8-3 at the moment, I feel like this team can compete with the best offenses like the Rams and the Saints. I really do. Yes, the Saints and the Rams both have unbelievable offenses, but I have a feeling they're going to meet one of those two in the playoffs, and they might, with Khalil Mack like leading the front of that defense, I think they actually put up quite a fight against a high-powered offensive team. I really do. And when you look at it all over, like from top to bottom, yeah, Mitch Trubisky's playing relatively well, and maybe the offense of the Bears side can outplay the defensive side of the Rams or the Saints. And maybe that puts the edge on. Maybe that the classic defense wins championships really comes in perspective when when the Bears meet one of these two in the playoffs. I firmly believe they're going to meet at least one of them in the playoffs. And I don't obviously the Bears won't get the first round bye. It'll be the Saints and Rams most likely. So whoever they face in the wild card game, they're going to have to play either the Rams or the Saints, whoever takes the second seed, because they'll probably have the best seed, best record going into the next round of the divisional round. So that's what I see it as. I see the Bears being probably the ultimate test for either the Saints or the Rams once it gets to the divisional round after their bye week. So, or the first round bye, as you could say. So that's how I see it. I see it as the Bears being a legitimate contender and a legitimate threat to the Rams and the Saints, because everyone's thinking, oh, this could be Saints, Rams in the NFC title game. Like one of these two are going to be in the Super Bowl. But man, the Bears could be a dark horse. The Bears can definitely be a serious factor. That's just how I see it. And anyways, just moving on from that game, let's go to the I guess afternoon game, you can say. Redskins and Cowboys. Redskins playing with Colt McCoy after Alex Smith's gruesome injury, which was hard to watch still. And the question was, can the Redskins really bounce back after losing their first string quarterback and win games still? Well, unfortunately, that answer is no, as the Dallas Cowboys defeated the Washington Redskins to take first place in the NFC East, 31-23. And with Colt McCoy, he didn't have the best game, 24-38, 268 yards. He did have 2 touchdowns, but threw 3 picks. He had a quarterback rating of 68.7. Obviously not the best kind of game. And the rushing game didn't help either. Like, Adrian Peterson had 12 attempts for only 35 yards. His longest run of the day was only 9 yards. And Colt McCoy actually had a longer run than Peterson that game. He had a 12-yard run scramble, mainly because of his offensive line not being the best. But a great game that somebody had was Vernon Davis, someone you don't expect to still have some juice left in him. I mean, he's over 10 years in the league out of Maryland. He had 2 receptions, but they were both big receptions. He had 73 yards in total and a touchdown. One of them was a big play, and he outran some secondary, which is very surprising. At his age, he can still outrun some. He still has got some speed in those legs. So it's very nice to see a guy who used to be honestly looked at as one of the best tight ends in the league, getting some of that old style back, old memories back. But you are looking at, I believe, a collapse for the Redskins. I don't think they're making the playoffs. Dallas takes control of first place in the NFC East. And Dak Prescott had a great game, actually. He had 121.6 quarterback rating, 22 of 31, 289 yards and 2 touchdowns and no picks, which really put him over the top. But Ezekiel Elliott, 26 attempts, 121 yards, and a touchdown. And he also did some in the air in the receiving game too. He had 5 receptions for 22 yards, no touchdowns, but he did play a relatively great game. But the one surprisingly great game for this, maybe not surprising to Jerry Jones, but surprising to me at least, was Amari Cooper. He flashed they drafted or traded him a first round pick. He got 8 receptions, 180 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He had some great catches, some great runs, but there was a costly miss by the Cowboys in the red zone at one point early in the game where Prescott throws kind of a dud pass in the where the guy's right in the end zone, and he just missed him. He just threw a dud at him, just a wounded duck. And the talk about it is this going to be a huge factor in the outcome of the game? Like, if they're losing by a touchdown, would this play a factor? Because they only kicked a field goal at the end of that drive. When they made it to about the 3 or 4 yard line, and it didn't. Obviously, they won the game, but the Redskins are on crutches right now with Colt McCoy. I hate to say that, but when you lose your starting quarterback, there's just this sense of dread. I mean, look at the 49ers, for example. I mean, losing Jimmy Garoppolo, this team had so much potential, everyone thought. And then they just are now have the first pick in the draft at the moment. So that's how crucial a quarterback is, especially a starting quarterback. And you feel for Alex Smith because he was doing really well his first year with the Redskins. I mean, they were 6-3 with him. They probably were going to be 6-4 by in that other game before he got injured, but it's still hard to for that Redskins team, and I think this is going to be a lost season for them. I really do. And all due respect to the Redskins, it just when sometimes you just got bad luck and can't control that. And who doesn't have bad luck, not good win for them, is the New Orleans Saints, as they face the Atlanta Falcons on the night game of Thursday of the Thanksgiving football lineup. They firmly handled the Atlanta Falcons 31-17, and honestly, this wasn't really a game from the start, in my opinion. Like I thought this game was going to be like 38-10 around there. I don't remember quite what the score was when I did this with Mark on Wednesday, but I was right in the assumption that the Saints were going to be the top team and wasn't going to be close, relatively. Breeze only had 171 yards passing, granted, but he did have 4 touchdown passes. He did throw a pick in the game, but that was like the end of the game. It could have been a pick 6, honestly, but he was fortunately for the Saints, he was fortunately touched on the ground before he got up and started taking it to the end zone. But I would definitely say that wasn't big of a factor, as Kamara also had 89 yards rushing. Melvin Ingram had 52 yards rushing, his credit. But everyone just played a part. There wasn't like a super standout performance. They just kept scoring points. And of course, their defense really stepped up, pressuring Matt Ryan and sacking him 6 times this game, which is a huge, huge thing for the Saints because everyone has looked at their defense as kind of lackluster against big teams and like, is this going to be the thing that kills them in the end? And then Julio Jones has a classic Julio Jones-like game, 11 receptions, 147 yards, but no touchdowns, which he should be getting tons of touchdowns. So it's just so weird to think about how good this guy's playing, but yet his touchdown numbers are so low. Calvin Ridley is leading the rookies in touchdowns with 8 touchdowns, as he had 8 receptions, 93 yards, and a touchdown this game. It was kind of like a garbage-like touchdown. It was like just to get points on the board type of thing. But bottom line is they scored. They scored a touchdown. They just couldn't really get the job done. And is it an excuse to say, like, from Super Bowl 51 to now, this team has dropped like a rock? They were the best offensive team in football going into the Super Bowl against the Patriots. They were up 28-3. Everyone knows the score. And now they're kind of looking at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to the NFC South. I know they're not the last in the NFC South, but they're close to it. Like, the Buccaneers are 3-7, and the Falcons are 4-7. So if the Buccaneers win their game this week, which we will get into all those games on Sunday later, they will be tied for last place in the NFC South. The only reason that they wouldn't be dead last and the Buccaneers take them over is just due to divisional records. They have a better division record, 2-2 to Buccaneers 1-2. And the Buccaneers can't improve that divisional record because they're playing a non-divisional team. So yeah, it's pretty disappointing for the Atlanta Falcons this season. Just going from having the Super Bowl in your hands to now the bottom of the barrel. It has to be demoralizing for this team, for this city, for this owner. Like, you had all this, like, and granted, it's the classic curse. If you don't know this curse, if you host the Super Bowl, if your stadium is hosting the Super Bowl, you're not making the Super Bowl. And it happened last year with the Vikings. They almost made it to the Super Bowl, but they got destroyed in the NFC title game. And it's happening this year as this team's just not. I don't think there's no chance they're making the playoffs, in my opinion. 4-7, they have to win out, and just even if they win out, even if they go 9-7, the Saints can. The worst the Saints can do is 10-6. They're 10-1 right now, so they have to have some unbelievable luck to get into the playoffs in a wild card spot because they can't even win their own division because the Saints at worst can be 10-6. And the Falcons can be as 9-7. So just there's no way. Panthers might have a chance though. At like they're 6-4, they can 12-4, they can somehow pull it off. But I see the Panthers taking a wild card spot though, definitely. But those are all the games that happened on Thanksgiving. We're gonna take a short break. When we get back, we're going to talk about some NBA stuff, as well as the Warriors and what's going on in Golden State, as well as LeBron's return to Cleveland. We'll be right back right after this.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. We just finished talking about the Thursday games that happened on Thanksgiving. The Falcons and Saints, the Bears and Lions, and the Cowboys and Redskins. But let's go on to the National Basketball Association. We had a lot of games that happened on Wednesday, but there were a couple ones I want to talk about first. The first one, I think, is the main one, is the Warriors lost their fourth straight game in a kind of decisive fashion against the Thunder, 123-95. Paul George had 25 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists. Russell Westbrook went 11, 11, and 13 for a triple-double. Adams had 20 points, 11 rebounds himself. And off the bench, Schroeder had 32 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, and a huge game for him. And this game was just all Thunder. And like Durant and Thompson both had 27 points. Durant had a double-double with 14 rebounds, adding on to his 27 points. But without Curry, it just seemed like this team was lost. And Draymond Green wasn't there either, granted. But this is the first time they had 4 straight losses in the Steve Kerr era. I don't know what to make of this in the terms of should they be worrying? Honestly, I still think they're going to take the number 1 seed in the West. It wouldn't surprise me. And they're 12-7 at the moment. They play tomorrow against Sacramento, which they will probably snap that losing streak. But they also play today against the Blazers, who are 12-6. So if they lose today, then I think the record will break with Sacramento. But they have a chance to break it tonight. I'm not sure. But the Blazers have been playing extremely well, so it's going to be a tough matchup for them, definitely. The Blazers have been starting off really hot this season. Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum have both been playing extremely well. And this is at Oracle Arena, so this is a home game for the Warriors. So I've bet a 10-minute inning to trying to get out of this slump they're in. Portland is coming off a 143-100 loss to the Milwaukee Bucks, who are arguably the best team in the NBA at the moment. And Giannis had 33 points, 16 rebounds, 9 assists, almost a triple-double for him. But, this looks like a serious contender, the Bucks do, to the Warriors if they continue to play like this. But the Blazers are also playing extremely well this beginning of the season, but they are still having to bounce back from a pretty tough loss themselves. And also, another big game that happened is LeBron's return to Cleveland. They had a little cool, one of the timeouts, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. They gave LeBron a cool little video tribute, thanking him for not what he's just done on the court, but also his things he's done for the community and the children and some schools he's helped and some foundations he's running. So it was a very cool tribute to LeBron in this game. So the question was going into it, would he be booed going into Cleveland? Would he be hated like he was when he was in Miami? The answer of that is no, because he was very cheered loudly and respected and loved still in Cleveland. I think the reason he's still loved in Cleveland is because he didn't make it such a big deal like he did with the decision. I think it was the reason it was on ESPN and that whole hour special, the decision really put that over the top and really broke the hearts of Cleveland. This one was like they kind of accepted it. It's like, okay, he's doing this for his family. He's doing this for his future. He's not going to be in the NBA for that much longer. He's been in the NBA since 2003, and it's 2018 now. So 15 years in the league. Probably, I say he still's got 4 or 5 years left in him. No question about that. So, but once he's done, what's he going to do? And I think he's thinking about that with signing with the Lakers. So, and I think Cleveland understood that. I really do. So I'm glad. That was a very mature and very humble thing to do for Cleveland, to give him that tribute of video. Just because of things that happened in Miami, just didn't turn out so well. So I'm glad they really accepted this fact and are still very happy that he came back and won them a championship. I really do. I think that was great for them. Moving on, though, we're going to go to Grizzlies and Spurs. Grizzlies coming off a 104-103 win of the Spurs, which is great for Memphis. I mean, this team is looking better than ever. I don't think anyone expected them to be this good going into the season. I mean, you're looking at the Western Conference. They're first in the Western Conference at 12-5. They've won 5 straight. With the Blazers' loss and the to the Bucks, the Grizzlies are first in the Western Conference at the moment. And when you want to hear something shocking, the 5th place team is Golden State Warriors at 12-7. Since they lost 4 straight, Oklahoma City's above them, as well as the Clippers, as well as the Blazers, because of thus they have 1 loss less than them. So it's really incredible to see that. And if you're looking right now, if the season ended today in the West, Memphis would be first, Portland would be second, LA Clippers would be third, Thunder would be fourth, Warriors would be fifth, Denver Nuggets will be sixth, who they're starting off pretty well, but they kind of dropped a little bit as of late. LA would be seventh, and Houston would be eighth. So that would be the playoffs at the moment for now. And then if you were gonna do this all, let's go to the East. The Raptors are first. Obviously, they've been playing the best basketball. They had the most wins in the season so far of any team. The Bucks are second. The 76ers, after the Butler trade, are third. Indiana is fourth. Detroit is fifth. Charlotte is sixth. Orlando is seven. And at number 8 is the Boston Celtics, after they have lost 3 straight themselves. So 2 teams that everyone thought was just going to run through their own conferences, Warriors and Celtics respectively, are on losing streaks. So that is something to think about. And if we're going to go through every other game on Wednesday, let's go through it. The Sacramento Kings went over the Utah Jazz 119-110. De'Aaron Fox had 17 points, 13 rebounds. Cauley Stein's really shown his stuff with 23 points and 7 rebounds himself. I mean, this Kings team looks pretty darn decent, if you ask me. Bagley's still coming off the bench, which I think is smart. 11 points, 6 rebounds. There is still talk about Jaeger from the Kings head coach being on the hot seat because he's not playing him that often, which is ridiculous in my opinion. But Donovan Mitchell still had a 35-point game, so there's still hope. There's still life in Utah, but that's a tough loss for them to take. Nets and Mavericks, we won't get into much detail this one. 119-113, Mavericks take it. Doncic had 21 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists. Definitely a contender for Rookie of the Year, as he's playing extremely well. And as for the Nets, the season's going as well as anyone thought they would go for Brooklyn. Always just seems to be at the bottom. I don't think it's their fault. I think it's just how things worked out. I think it's just a front office mishaps and trading first-round picks in future selections unprotected kind of cost them a lot. As for the Nuggets, they win their game against the Timberwolves 103-101. The Timberwolves have really struggled since losing Jimmy Butler on that trade. overall, you look at like Jeff Teague, who had 7 points, 8 assists, pretty decent. But Karl Anthony Towns had 22 points himself. Andrew Wiggins had 13 points, 5 rebounds. They had all, and Derrick Rose coming off the bench, 20 points. He's still playing extremely well. He could get most improved player of the year without question. I mean, that 50-point game that he had probably put him over the top a little bit in that circumstance. But again, the Timberwolves kind of struggling without Jimmy Butler, trying to find themselves. Moving on, though, we got the Rockets and Pistons. Rockets take this one 126-124. Pistons still playing really good. Blake Griffin, 37 points, 11 rebounds. He might get most improved, too, to be completely honest with you. And Drummond got 20 points, 11 rebounds himself. And then you have Chris Paul taking 20 points. And James Harden with 43 points. 43 points, 7 rebounds, 9 assists for him. 10 of 20. He only made 10 baskets. And it really showed that he still got some MVP stuff in him because he won the MVP last year, trying to bounce back. And we're going to go by some of these other games. Bulls win at 124-116 over the Suns. And you're looking mainly at DeAndre Ayton and how he's doing. Ayton had 18 points, 12 rebounds. So pretty good game for him, all things considered. But couldn't enough get it done. This team is still struggling, Phoenix-wise. And then you look at the Knicks beating the Celtics 117-109. Again, the Celtics are on a losing streak at the moment. Kyrie Irving had a double-double, 22 points, 13 assists, but was not enough. And this team's struggling. This team is definitely struggling. And Gordon Hayward actually kind of bounced back. He's been struggling on the starting lineup, but off the bench he had 19 points, so good for him after that brutal injury. Burke off the bench for the Knicks had 29 points himself and 11 assists. So all around, good for the Knicks, bad for the Celtics. Raptors, in a non-surprising fashion, beat the Hawks 124-108. And Vince Carter actually now has 25,000 points in his career. Good for him. Congratulations. We're going to just move on real quick. Hornets and Pacers. Hornets win this one 127-109. And for Kemba Walker, 16 points, 11 assists. He had all those great performances with the over 100 points in the multiple games. In multiple games played, all combined. Not 100 points in multiple games. He's not Will Chamberlain now. But overall, Hornets win this one. And then the 76ers with Jimmy Butler beat the Pelicans 121-120. The closest game of the day on Wednesday by far. Multiple players on the Pelicans had 30 points. Drew Holiday and Moore had 30 points. Julius Randle off the bench had 22 points, 10 rebounds. And, I mean, Anthony Davis did have a double-double, 12 points, 16 rebounds, so pretty decent for him. Ben Simmons had 22 points, which is pretty good. Joel Embiid, 31-19 game for him. Jimmy Butler with 13 points and 6 rebounds, 3 assists for him. So that's all the games, mainly on Wednesday, that happened in the NBA. There are some games happening today, so we'll see if Cleveland can bounce back from a loss. They're 2-14. Hopefully they can get a win, but they'll play in the 76ers, so doubt it. Trailblazers and Warriors. Hopefully the Trailblazers are looking to continue that losing streak for the Warriors, so we'll see what happens there. But right now, we should honestly talk about a real quick twerp. Actually, we're gonna take a short break. Let's take a short break instead. And when we get back, we're gonna be talking about Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson. It's happening today. The $9 million pay-per-view game that's happening between the two. 101 little score. We'll get right on that. We'll talk a little bit about that, as well as the NFL games that are happening on Sunday right after this.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to Extreme Cage Fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back, everyone, to the GSMC Sports Podcast. Let's get right into it. We just finished talking about the NBA. Now let's go into the Capital One The Match. Tiger Woods versus Phil Mickelson. $9 million on the line. And they both have been rivals for decades now, it feels like. And it's the day after Thanksgiving. They said they would do this. But on pay-per-view, it's like a boxing fight. $19.99 for to watch two guys golf, which is kind of gutsy in my opinion for them to have this on pay-per-view because golf is not such a watch sport, all things considered. Like, these guys are well known, absolutely, but when you think about it, most of those are probably like going through ESPN highlights and stuff like that. Excuse me. And looking overall at this. And no tickets have been sold to attend the match, meaning the gallery will be comprised of invited guests, and both players will donate. Some of their post-holiday money will be donated to charity, so that's cool. But this isn't like you pay to go there. They're getting invited people, so they're making money solely off of the pay-per-view buys. So when you look at these two guys, they're both icons of the golfing world, Phil Mickelson and Tiger Woods, and they're both decorated athletes, so this is obviously a game that everyone knows who they are. They're not just two random golfers. These Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson may be the most two popular golfers in the world right now. And probably of the last 10 to 15 years, they've been the most popular. You can add like Rory McIlroy to that. You can add maybe some others to that. But honestly, it's those two that are the main ones. And this could be a fun thing to watch. Personally, it's gonna be difficult. Like, I don't want to spend $19.99 on it, but I will do what I can to watch it, just out of interest. And honestly, I want to see how this plays out. Is it going to play friendly, nice and casual golfing game where they're just talking and making jokes and all this stuff, or is it going to be like nice and serious? Who knows how this is going to turn out? But I think it's going to be very interesting to say at least. Tiger versus Phil. It's called The Match, like the big game or something like that, basically trying to take a nickname to the game, make it more important. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting to say the least, just off the fact that it's a pay-per-view. I think that's what throws people off the most, is it's a pay-per-view. But yes. Moving on, though, we're going to talk about the NFL games that are happening on Sunday. I'm just going to go through a little order here I have on my iPhone or my telephone or whatever phone you want to call it. We got this is basically rivalry week in the NFL as well as college football. But we'll start off with Browns and Bengals. Browns obviously 36-1, still coming back from that 0-16 start, but they've been playing relatively well. Baker Mayfield's having a good year, all things considered. 13 touchdowns, and yeah, he has 7 interceptions, but still playing relatively decent. The Bengals, on the other hand, have been kind of struggling themselves. They're 500 at 5-5. And then you're looking at like points per game. They're both 21.8 for the Browns, 25.6 for the Bengals. Their yards per game is actually pretty even when it comes to passing, 245 to 255. And if I had to pick a winner in this matchup, you know what? I'm going to give it to Cincinnati. I just think they have the better offense altogether. They're hoping for A.J. Green to return. They have Joe Mixon. Andy Dalton's kind of a veteran in comparison to Baker Mayfield and his talents. Baker Mayfield's still trying to find his talents, and Andy Dalton's at the point. And A.J. Green is questionable. If he's in there, that might change the factor of the game as well. But I have the Bengals taking this one. Moving on, we got the classic Giants and Eagles matchup. And the Eagles have been playing relatively not well. Like, they're dropping from Super Bowl win to last in like their NFC East. And you know what? I'm going to take the Giants winning on this one. I think Barkley is going to have a great game, which he has had many great games recently, as well as Beckham Jr. really showing up. And I think it's just the talent around Eli is so good that the Giants are going to win this one. I really do. They're going to beat Philadelphia in this. That is my opinion. And of course, Philadelphia does have a lot of injured guys, like a lot of questionable guys, linebackers and corners alike. But when you're looking at their stats at the stat line, they're both pretty even. 21.5 points a game for New York and 20.5 for Philadelphia. And they're both averaging in the 370s. Like for New York, they're averaging 373 yards per game, 373.6 to be exact. And the Philadelphia Eagles are doing 375.2 yards per game. So they're pretty even, all things considered. But I'm still taking the Giants in this. I think they have Barkley, which is going to be the big difference maker in this matchup against the Philadelphia Eagles. So yes, I have the Giants taking this one. And then we have the Jaguars and Bills. And this one is two playoff teams from last year, now just both 3-7. So they kind of dropped off a cliff, both of them, in a year's time. And you're looking at both of them. You have Blake Bortles, who's playing so-so, and then you had Josh Allen, who was playing well, but now they have Matt Barkley, who came off a win and playing actually pretty well, all things considered. And they've been going through all these quarterback problems and all these things. And I don't think they have technically playoff hopes still. They both have chances to make the playoffs. But if I had to make an assumption or had to make a guess, I would say neither of them win. So they both have very faint playoff hopes. But I think it's smart for the Bills to keep Josh Allen on the sideline maybe for the rest of the season. It's a lost season. Maybe just keep him there. You always see quarterbacks do better when they're a rookie quarterback's league coming off the sideline, not starting right away. So in this game, really, I feel like has no meaning. 3-7 teams. But if I had to choose, I might say this. I think the Jaguars defense might take it for this one, but honestly, they've been collapsing as of late. So I might have to give this to the Buffalo Bills just because they're coming off a win with Matt Barkley. And I don't know, I might have to pick Matt Barkley over Blake Bortles, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pick Matt Barkley over Blake Bortles. You can call me crazy all you want, but that's how I think of it. And we're going to go on to I guess we were talking about how all these games are, like, some of them are rivalry-based. This one is clearly not, as the 2-8 49ers take on the 3-7 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This game is interesting to say the least, say the most, actually. And because Winston's back at quarterback as the Buccaneers host the 49ers, Winston is the starting quarterback. After Fitzpatrick's pretty disappointing game last week, which I feel like they didn't give him a chance to really improve, but honestly, that's how it works. Especially on a team like this, you are on thin ice regardless of how well you played the week before or the week after. And if I had to pick a team to win this one, I have to go with the Buccaneers just because I think the 49ers are a lost hope. I think they're in I don't know if they're in tank mode or they're just playing the game how it is and they just don't have the talent to do it because they're playing with a lot of undrafted guys. Like Nick Mullins starting he's an undrafted Southern Mississippi that was a practice squad guy not 3 weeks ago. So obviously there is some that needs to be worked on. Like they came off that win from Oakland 34-3. Then they lost to the Giants. Then they've lost to Arizona, the Rams, and Green Bay in their last 5. They are 1-4, and the 1-4 and 1-4 as well in the last 5 for Tampa Bay. Their last win came against Cleveland in overtime in October, so they haven't won in November yet. So yeah, that's what we're looking at. But if I had to pick, I'm going the Buccaneers. I just think the defense, the secondary of the 49ers is not going to do well against anybody, even if it's Jameis Winston who's been struggling. But yeah, I have the Buccaneers taking this one, definitely. I would be doing like the scores and stuff, guessing but my co-host is not here, which is totally fine. So he's with his family, like I said before, so all good. And then we're looking at another rivalry game, Patriots and Jets. I mainly this was because of just Bill Belichick resigning from the Jets and going to the Patriots probably set that fire in the rivalry up. So the question is, who are you going for in this game between the Patriots and Jets? I'm insulted you would even ask, because it's going to be the Patriots, 7-3 Patriots, who haven't been playing like their best. I know this is kind of weird to say, but like they've been playing really good, but they played so much better in the past that they've really let some games go. Those 3 losses, they could have won those 3 games. But for the Jets are still in a rebuilding phase. Sam Darnold is supposedly has not practiced this week, so he will not be playing this game most likely. That's what the predictions are for this game. And the Patriots are coming off a 34-10 loss to Tennessee, but I think with Josh McCown for the Jets, he's not a starter. He's not the guy. Like, he could be a good mentor for Darnold, sure, but not really the starter that could beat the Patriots. So yeah, obviously I got the Patriots winning this. And then we're going to go on to the Raiders and Ravens. Not a rivalry game, but still, I say rivalry week because of also it's for college football, but there are some games here that you can say have some interesting aspects of it, to say the least. Raiders and Ravens. Raiders are obviously in tank mode. That's obviously Gruden's mindset. I wouldn't be surprised if he can deny it all he wants, but that's everyone's opinion of that outside of him. And when you're looking at like their points per game and points allowed, the Raiders have only scored 17 a game and allowed 29.3 points per game, while the Ravens have only allowed 18.1 points per game. So I see this as a Ravens defense just smothering the Oakland Raiders. And Lamar Jackson is making his second start against the Raiders, which is maybe a good luck charm. Maybe not a good luck charm, but fortunate for him because he's playing such a weak defense. But he's gonna have to play against a challenging team sooner or later. But he's playing a pretty weak defense in the Oakland Raiders. So I got the Baltimore Ravens winning this one. And then you look at the Seahawks and the Panthers. Seahawks are 5-5, Panthers 6-4, but Panthers are looking more at a playoff spot than the Seahawks are. They're both in the hunt, but I think the Panthers are doing better than the Seahawks, so give me the Panthers on this one. Like, they're averaging more points per game at 26 to their 4.6 for Seattle. Their yards per game is pretty even, both defensively and offensively, but I just don't know. I just have this gut feeling that the Panthers are just a better team overall than the Seattle Seahawks. I think Cam Newton is better than Russell Wilson. Christian McCaffrey's been playing really well in the backfield. The Seattle Seahawks are trying to find that backfield still, to be in all honesty. And their receiving core, there's a lot to be desired on both sides of the ball. But I just have the Panthers. I think wherever they have a good matchup, they can exploit it. Especially Cam Newton just knows how to really attack the defense with his legs and his arms. So yeah, give me the Panthers on this one. And then we're going to go Cardinals and Chargers. Basically a team looking for a first-round bye, while the other one is looking to get a number 1 pick. So that equals to Chargers winning. Do I really need to explain this? One is tanking, the other one's not. The other one actually has a chance to go to the Super Bowl. A lot of people predict them to go to the Super Bowl. And I will say this based off their total yards per game. The Cardinals have 260.4 yards per game to the Chargers' 410. Need I say more? I don't think so. Chargers over Arizona. As for the Dolphins and Colts, this one's kind of different. They're both 5-5. Andrew Luck, though, has been playing extremely well. Obviously a comeback player of the year candidate. Probably the winner as well. But Ryan Tannehill is coming back to start after he's been gone for about a good month. But right now, the Colts have been playing extremely well. Yes, the Colts are still trying to find like their groove. They're 500 right now. They still have a chance to really make the playoffs, maybe a wild card spot in the AFC, maybe even come out and unexpectedly win the AFC South. But the AFC South is trying to lack. The AFC South is weakening a little bit, my opinion at least. And they've won their last 4. The Colts have. And so give me the Colts on this one. I just think the momentum's going to carry, and they're going to go over Miami. And before we go to break, we'll talk about one more game. Steelers and Broncos. Steelers coming off that narrow win against Jacksonville, 20-16. And they have won their last 5 in a row. They've won their last 5 games compared to the last 5 games for Denver, who've won only 2 of their last 5 games, so 2-3 in the last 5, 5-0 for the Steelers. And right now, it looks like the Steelers are getting back into the groove. James Conner's playing extremely well with the absence of Le'Veon Bell. And Roethlisberger with 23 touchdowns, 10 interceptions is better than Keenum's disappointing 11 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. And right now, I just see this Steelers team just not being able to be stopped, and I think they're going to make a very comfortable ride into the playoffs, and it starts with this game against Denver. But again, they did barely narrowly beat the Jaguars, and so but I think I still have the Steelers taking this one. But you know what? We're going to take a short break. We got 2 more games left, and then we're going to be talking about some college football games that are happening, especially one big one between Michigan and Ohio State, the big game. We'll get right on that when we return.
Are you looking for help for your fantasy football team? Check out the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast. Get today's best advice on who to start, who to sit, even who you should draft. From sleeper picks to red-hot lineups, they got it all covered for you. That's gsmcpodcast.com/fantasy-football-podcast. We'll cover traditional leagues, dynasty, PPR, even IDP leagues. When you need fantasy help, there's just one show to hit up. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Sports Podcast. We're finishing up the NFL roundup that's happening this week. Packers-Vikings, a big rivalry. But when you're looking at this rivalry, it is not the same as it used to be. And what I mean by that is the Vikings are struggling even with Kirk Cousins. And everyone thought Kirk Cousins would be that guy that would put him over the top, put him in that Super Bowl contending spot. But at 5-4-1, I mean, that's disappointing in my opinion. This team coming off nearly a Super Bowl appearance to, like, kind of lackluster, in my opinion. 5-4-1, they should be doing a lot better than that. And with Green Bay, 4-5-1. But Aaron Rodgers has 19 touchdowns and only 1 interception. How does that work? I tell you how it works. Guys around Rodgers are not playing to that level. They are not complimenting Rodgers. They're not helping Rodgers. It's no one to blame except you cannot blame Aaron Rodgers, but you can blame everyone else around him. Coaching, defense, receivers, running game, you name it. Like, he's doing what he can to help them win, and they're just not giving it back to him. And Mike McCarthy is on the hot seat, yes. So, do I think he's going to get fired by the end of the season? Yes, I do. And if he doesn't win this game against the Vikings, I think it's a foregone conclusion he'll get fired. But if he finishes with a winning record, maybe he stays. But I think that with even what it possibly be 9-6-1 being what they can do, like, the best they can do is 10-5-1. But if they go to even 9-6-1, I think that's still a disappointing year. I don't think they make the playoffs with that kind of record. But I think this is McCarthy's last year. I think he's had so much talent around him, he can only win 1 Super Bowl. And he's kind of been choking in the playoffs ever since that 2010 Super Bowl run. So, yeah, but to say who wins this game, give me the Vikings. I know they both teams have been playing not very well, but I'll take the Vikings definitely in this one. just because I think everyone around Kirk Cousins, I think they're better than what Aaron Rodgers has around him. And finally, we got that's on Monday night. I almost hit it. I almost hit the talk about the Titans and Texans, but that is a Monday night game. We will get on that on Monday. So we'll go right into the college football world. And obviously, there's one game we need to talk about more than the others. Not that the others aren't important, but this game just, I think, trumps everything else. I think even trumps the Iron Bowl, to be honest. But I think the Iron Bowl just because they're not ranked. But we got Michigan versus Ohio State. The game. And the thing is with Michigan is they Jim Harbaugh has not beaten Urban Meyer since he started with the Michigan Wolverines, when he first took that job. And if that streak continues, he costs his team a playoff spot. He loses the playoffs. And that's going to hurt his legacy, I think. What I mean by that is he's been here for a long time now. His recruiting class has always been stellar because everyone wants to play for him, and I get that. But you got to look at, you got to do something with that. And looking into this game here, this is a must-win for both teams, obviously. I think Ohio State still has a chance to make it into the playoffs, sure. But this is more of a must-win for Michigan than it is for Ohio State. This is more win for Jim Harbaugh. This is a game Jim Harbaugh has to win. I don't think he has any choice in the matter. Because if he loses this game, then there's going to be questions about his coaching, questions about his legacy, and a question of can he win the big one. So that's the huge thing. But do I see Michigan winning this? There's a very good chance. This is at Ohio Stadium in Columbus, which gives the edge to Ohio State, sure. But I still think Michigan has more to lose than Ohio State does, and so they're going to be playing much harder, and they're going to give everything more on the field and more risks on the field than Ohio State will. And I think that's where it's going to play a factor in who's taking this one. So, give me Michigan and give me Jim Harbaugh's first win over Urban Meyer. But this game is it's the game of the year for people. This is like a holiday. Michigan and Ohio State, the greatest rivalry in college sports, maybe even all-time sports, you can say. So there's so much on the line for both these teams. Obviously, there is a lot on the line, but Michigan hasn't beaten Ohio State in Columbus since 2000. So it's been 18 years since they won in there. Which is also the last year of the game that the game drew fewer than 100,000 people. Since 2012, at least one of the teams has come into the game ranked in the top 10 as well. So, this game has a lot of riding on it. This game is going to have the most eyes on it, both in the stadium and on the television screen. So, for either one of these teams, they need this for the playoffs. Ohio State still has a slight chance to make the playoffs, but I think if Michigan wins this, they get that playoff. They need that playoff. Jim Harbaugh needs that playoff for his legacy, like I said before. But yeah. There are some other games happening, but I think just as important. There's two other games that I think are just as important as the game, and that's Notre Dame and USC. I know USC is lackluster at a 5-6 record, but they could totally play spoiler against Notre Dame and cost them a shot at the playoffs. It would be a very nice surprise, but I won't take USC lightly if I'm Notre Dame, not by a long shot. And we have the game. We're going to go in the Iron Bowl. Alabama versus Auburn. Auburn, yes, not their best season at 7-4, and they're playing in Alabama, which is pretty rough to be all considered. Alabama is a 24.5-point favorite also against Auburn, which is understandable. Auburn's 7-4, Alabama's 11-0. It makes sense. Logically, it makes sense. But is there another kick six in the works? another miracle for Auburn. Who knows? That's the beauty of college football, especially. There's just anything can happen. But if I had a gun in my head and I had to pick between Auburn and Alabama, it's going to be Alabama. I don't think there's really a reason to doubt them. They're number one team for a reason. They've been number one for so long. It's almost like accepted now. But if we're going to talk about college football, we got to talk about the Egg Bowl that happened yesterday on Thanksgiving, because I think that's something to have to talk about. Mississippi State goes over Ole Miss 35-3. They win the Egg Bowl, but there was a little bit of a brawl. Actually, there was a brawl where every single player on the field got an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty, which sounds absurd when you think about it. But Mississippi State, ranked, versus Ole Miss, unranked, so it was kind of like a formality. Well, maybe not a formality, but going into halftime, it was 21-3, so it was basically over already by then. But overall, that's all the time we have today. I can't really think of anything else to talk about. I mean, there's Utah State versus Boise State, but that's two low-ranked teams. LSU versus Texas A&M could be something special. South Carolina could play spoiler over Clemson. Pittsburgh could play another. Is actually doing better than Miami this time. Like last year, Miami was ranked, I believe, 2, and Pittsburgh upset them. But now Pittsburgh's ranked 24, and Miami's unranked. So Miami kind of dropped off after that. And then we have, of course, Georgia and Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech could ruin Georgia's playoff hopes in that matter. And then we have Oklahoma, West Virginia, Washington State, UCF in South Florida. We got a lot of good games going on this week for college football. Beautiful rivalry week. Can't get much better than that. And, I mean, this is going to be very interesting to say the least. Just because of the Iron Bowl and the game, I think those two are going to be the most watched, obviously. And they're going to be the most, they have the most ramifications when it comes to playoffs. But that is all that we have time for. Tune us in on Monday. We'll talk about Monday Night Football. We'll talk about all the aftermath of the college football games and the NFL games and anything else in the NBA that happened or any surprising events that happened in baseball. Who knows? But tune us in on Monday, and we will see you then.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.